Hello and welcome along to Taking the Biz. Great to have so many of you along. This is, of course, the channel for A-level business students looking to do just a little bit of revision. And stay tuned because in today's video, we're only going to be having a look at the topic of business objectives. So the best place to start with business objectives is obviously to work out what a business objective even is. So all businesses have objectives, whether they're written down and formalized or whether the entrepreneur that runs the business just carries them around in their head. And all an objective is simply a target. It's a goal. It's something that the managers or the owners of the business want to try and achieve and make a focus of the business's activities over a given period of time. Now, we know that from studying A-level business, we have organizations of all types of different sizes, and the medium to larger organizations tend to refer to their objectives as corporate objectives, and these might be a little bit more formalized. Often they'll be written in annual reports that might go out. They'll be visible on the business's website, but even the smallest of business, even a sole trader, has an objective, even if it's one that the owner of that sole trader just takes around in their head and uses as the inspiration and the motivation behind driving their business activities. Now, for our exams, one of the things that we probably need to know is why business objectives are even set. What purpose do they serve for business organizations? Why do managers and entrepreneurs favor them so much? Well, there's a couple of reasons that are useful for us to know about and write about in exams. First of all, if you don't have a goal, if you don't have a target that you're working towards, an objective that you're striving to achieve, then it's very difficult to assess, to monitor, to appraise the progress your business is making. Unless you've got a clear and identifiable endpoint that your business is working towards over a given period of time, it's very difficult to plan and strategize, assess and appraise the progress that your business is making unless you've got a goal that you are working towards. So objectives help fill that void. By having a target that everybody in the organization is aware of and knows that they're working towards, it means that the business can assess how close they are to achieving that target. They can look at the strategies that they're using and see whether they're working. Are they helping the business work towards the objectives that it's set? Or does the business have some way to go before it achieves its objectives, in which case its strategies might need to change? The other area of usefulness of objectives, if you like, is that they also provide some kind of guidance, some kind of framework for people in the organization to work towards. If you imagine, if you work in an organization, particularly if it's a larger one, but also true for medium and smaller businesses as well, you go about your daily activities and you get on with your job, but the business wants you to try and work towards something. They want you to focus on specific aspects of the performance of the organization. Well, objectives serve the role of communicating to everybody in the organization what its priorities are. As people are going about their day-to-day work, what should they make their primary focus? What should they be trying to strive towards? As they do their jobs and they contribute towards the running of the organization, what is it that they should be trying to develop or implement or work towards? Objectives tell them. So if a business has a certain key objective that it wants everybody to work towards, by setting it as a target, by communicating it to people in the organization, they can factor that into the day-to-day decisions that they make and the work that they carry out to make sure that the business is heading in the direction that the owners of it would wish. Now, obviously, it's the owners of smaller organizations or possibly the more senior management of larger organizations that set objectives, but there are a whole host of different possible objectives that businesses might work towards. So in the early days, one of the smaller, more modest objectives that business owners might work towards is just survival. Because starting a new business is so fraught with danger, because so many new businesses fail in their first 12 to 24 weeks, just setting that primary goal of still being in business in 6 months' time or 12 months' time might be a suitable objective for smaller organizations. As businesses become more established, they might start to focus on objectives objectives that are financial in nature, such as profit. And the owners of the business or the managers might set a certain level of profit that they would like the business to achieve by a certain point in the future. Or they might set objectives to do with profit growth. So rather than saying we would like to make £100,000 profit by the end of 2022, they might say we would like to increase profits by 10% by 2022. Businesses that are less focused on profit and more focused on trying to develop their organization might set objectives to do with units sold to achieve a certain sales output rather than a degree of profit. Businesses might also, if they're in very competitive markets, set targets to do with market share. They might have a target to do with trying to increase their dominance or their competitiveness in a market by increasing their market share. Now, they might state a figure, so to increase our market share to 30% of the market, or they might set a percentage that they want to increase it by. We want to improve our market share by 5% by this point in time. But market share is a great objective for businesses that are very competitive, that are looking to be aggressive in their marketplace. If you set an objective to do with improving profit, you might improve your profit by £1 million, but all of your rivals might improve their profits as well. So you haven't actually become any more competitive in the marketplace. But objectives doing market share are slightly more aggressive than that. If a business improves its market share by 5%, then de facto it is going to have taken 5% of the market share from its various rivals. So businesses that are looking to be quite aggressive and be competitive might set market share as an objective. Businesses that are in a different situation, maybe organizations that have experienced some cash flow problems, some liquidity crises in the recent past, might set cash flow objectives and improving the liquidity of the firm as one of their major objectives. Businesses that are ambitious might set objectives to do with growth. This could be to declare a number of new outlets that they would like to open, a number of new product ranges that they would like to launch, maybe to select some specific geographical locations that they would like to expand to by a point in the future. Larger organisations, particularly PLCs, might set themselves some corporate objectives to do with shareholder returns. They might have objectives to do with the dividend that they reward their shareholders with, or maybe even the share price that they are able to achieve. Businesses that take a broader view and consider the needs of a wider range of stakeholders in the organisation might focus on maybe their employees or their customers as part of their objectives. So lots of businesses might set objectives to do with employee welfare, trying to improve the satisfaction and the working conditions of the people that are employed by the organisation, because they believe that that is the way that an organisation should be run. Of course, many businesses have such a value attached to their customers, they might have objectives to do with their customer base as well and the service that they are able to provide. The other area of objective setting that many organisations are utilising, and so many larger organisations are now becoming pretty tuned into, is the need to set objectives to do with the wider environment, to set greener objectives, objectives that are focused on being more environmentally friendly, reducing carbon footprints, trying to reduce the impact that businesses have on the planet. And then lots of businesses also set broader social objectives as well, maybe not focusing just on the environment, but on other areas of corporate social responsibility, whether that be the work that they do with suppliers, or again, it could be to do with community projects that they run and wanting to give back to the communities that they operate in. But this is just the broad spectrum of different topics that businesses might set objectives about. Now, for our exams, it's worth knowing the different reasons why objectives might come about. Why does business A have this set of corporate objectives when business B has a completely different set of corporate objectives? And the answer to that is that businesses find themselves in different situations. They face different scenarios. They have different internal and external factors that are pushing against the business and influencing what they might set as their targets. So let's start with the internal factors that might have a part to play in determining the kind of objectives that a business might set. Now, perhaps the most crucial The most fundamental factor that might determine what a business is striving to achieve is the performance of the organisation. If business A is experiencing pretty desperate fortunes right now, if profits have been tumbling, if shareholders are unhappy about the returns that they are getting, then that's going to play a strong bearing on influencing what the objectives might be for that business for the next 2 to 5 years. Whereas if a business is experiencing a completely different set of performance issues, maybe a business is performing incredibly well, maybe growth has been huge over recent years, profits are absolutely soaring, then the business might decide that rather than have a certain set of objectives, it needs to focus on these things to capitalize on the growth and improvements that have been made in the organization. Another bearing on the objectives that a business might set might be the culture of the organization as well. And this culture will probably come from the ownership of the organization, what they believe is right, what they want to focus on as individuals that run organizations. So if the culture of the business is particularly employee focused, then you might expect employee welfare targets to form the objectives of the business. If the organization is particularly profit focused and has a real intent on rewarding shareholders, then if that's the belief of the owners, if that's the culture of the organization, then it may well filter into the objectives. The same with social objectives, with corporate social responsibility, with environmental goals or broader ethical objectives that a business might set. That will come from the culture of the organization. And if the culture is heavily focused on social responsibility, then it makes sense that the objectives will be as well. The other internal factor that might influence a business's objectives is whether the business is very focused on the short term or whether the business takes a more long-term approach to how the business is developing. Businesses that are very focused on the short term might set objectives to do with the here and now. Let's improve sales right now. Let's improve the dividends or the rewards we give our shareholders. Let's try and desperately improve profits right now. And let's try and do that in the next 12 to 24 months. Whereas other businesses, they take a more long-term view of their organizations, and they might reflect that in their objectives. They might have longer-term objectives to do with improving their market share over a period of time. They might have more social objectives to do with what the business can do to lessen its impact on the environment or to improve the way it supports local communities over a much longer period of time. But then we've got some really important external impacts on your objectives as well, chiefly what's going on in the economic environment, because that can play a big role in affecting the objectives that businesses set. Businesses might set a completely different set of targets when the economy is struggling, when consumers have declining incomes, when the country is in a recession. They might have completely different objectives to where the economy is vibrant. People are in work, they're experiencing pay rises, they've got greater disposable incomes. These two different economic scenarios might lead the same business to set completely contrasting organizational objectives. Now, what your rivals are up to can also play an impact on your objectives as well. Sometimes a business needs to set objectives as a way of retaliating or responding to what other firms in the marketplace are doing. So if one of your greatest rivals has had a big focus on profits and improving shareholder returns, then your shareholders might be looking at you thinking, hey, what are you doing for us? Should we sell our shares and buy shares in that rival business of yours? So you might need to make retaliating to what your rivals have been doing one of the key foci for your business, so it might become one of your organizational objectives. And perhaps the final thing we could mention that businesses might weigh up when they're deciding what their objectives are for the organization is the relative power that different stakeholder groups have. Because when a business has a stakeholder that is quite powerful and can exert some kind of influence over the organization, then it makes sense that the business is going to want to listen to the needs of that stakeholder and reflect the needs of that stakeholder when setting their targets that they would like to try and achieve. So, for example, if a business has very, very powerful shareholders, it might want to make them the focus of its objectives. But in businesses that maybe are heavily unionized or has perhaps gone through some industrial relations issues and the organization's employees are quite powerful right now, then it makes sense that the business might look to try and take care of the needs of that stakeholder group and reflect this through the targets or objectives that they set. So we've got a whole host of different factors that might influence the objectives. For your exams, it's crucial to know what objectives are. It's crucial to know why businesses might set them and how they can help organizations. And it's also important to know the different factors that might lead businesses to set certain objectives. Hopefully that video will help you with that topic. Hopefully your revision's going well. We will see you very soon, and in the meantime, you keep on taking the biz.